So on the show today, Wilrieke Sophia. I hope I've got that right. It's the first time trying that name. Joining us from the Netherlands today, right?
That's correct.
Welcome. How do you describe yourself?
I like to call myself an intimacy activist.
Intimacy activist. I knew this was going to be about sexuality and kink and Tantra and non-monogamy and cuddling. And I've sort of heard that, people get quite delicate about what they're called in this space. So I thought I'd just let you, say it for yourself. How did you get interested in the body, Wilrieke? How did you get interested in this?
I guess because I always used to be so shy and insecure. Like I really had super bad self-esteem, really bad. I felt really bad about my body. I was never touched. I was barely ever touched when I grew up, like very little, not with my friends. And I had my horses around me. My horses were like my dear friends. But, at some point... What, sorry?
You're a horse girl. Okay.
Yes, totally. So you can see the unicorn.
Oh my God, we're not gonna be friends. So give us the geography here. You're growing up where? What age is this? Give us a bit more of a sense of this.
I was born in '83, so in the '80s, I guess, in the Netherlands, in a small village, a bit conservative village. I had to bike to school for like 15 kilometers, like 1 hour to a school that was quite posh.
Oh,
all these posh kids. And they didn't like me very much. So I was a bit bullied, I was a bit lonely, and that's how I grew up. Yeah, I was very much outcast. Yeah, I was hanging out with the goths.
Got it. Okay, my wife was a goth, and I went for a Black Island stage, so I can relate to that. Yeah. And what was your sort of interest then? Was it Tantra, or was it yoga? I mean, what was your first doorway to?
Not at the time. At the time, it was just horses. But then
never understood those never understood it.
And I actually didn't study touch either. I studied forests and trees. Like I've got a master's degree in ecology, which is something completely different. Okay. But then growing up, I was having a job that I didn't like. I quit. I had a few babies. I'm a mum, and at some point, I met one of my a person who inspired me a lot. His name is Steve Bevlina. He's an American writer, and he came over to Europe, and I met him, and he dragged me on stage to do a Cuddle demo in his lecture, and afterwards, like we hung out for a week, and then he said, Wilrieke, you got to do something with this. Like these cuddles of yours are magic. You can make money with them. And it took me time. But then at some point I was like, you know what? Let's try it. And that's how the first ever Cuddle workshop happened. And the rest is history, basically. More and more people came, and then I decided, like, hey, I can actually really make this my living. And then
so Cuddles and Cuddle workshop became your thing.
Yeah, that was how it started. And then it broadened, like at the same time, like as a parallel path, I wanted to do, like I started to meet people who were doing Tantra. Like it was the same time I was also opening the relationship I had at the time. So I started opening up to meet people, and I started meeting people who were into Tantra, who were into kink. And I was like, you know what, I actually want to do some workshops in this, but I didn't have the money. So I love networking. I love hanging out with people. I love meeting people. So at some point I managed to get some international Tantra teacher to the Netherlands, and ending up being his organizer and assistant. So I went to Tantra workshops making money with it. And that's how it started. So I went to more workshops, made some money. I could go to other workshops, being a mom at the same time, and took my Cuddle workshops.
Okay. I mean, Cuddles is interesting. And I just met someone in the park today who hadn't had a hug from anyone except her boyfriend in 3 months. And just before this call, there's this sort of weird environment around touch now. I don't know what the situation now is in the Netherlands, but we're just sort of opening up from the kind of COVID lockdown here in the UK now. Yeah. What's your thoughts on sort of why Cuddles Matter? Why is that a thing? I mean, why is there workshops on that? Say more about that.
Yeah, there's so much to say about it. There's more and more research on the benefits of cuddling, but I think the main one is it is such a good antidote to stress. There's so much stress in our world on a daily basis. This is a society that's very much like thriving off stress, like always pushing. We need to earn more, do more. There's always more. So we're a lot in our, our nervous system is activated a lot of the time. And we're in our fight, flight, whatever kind of reaction. There's a lot of stress and all these adrenaline hormones that come with that. And what cuddling does is that it really, it releases, of course, oxytocins, dopamines, these hormones are kind of like the opposite of all the adrenaline. And other than that, it's like co-regulating nervous systems. So you breathe together, you calm down. And other than that, it's lowering blood pressure, it's lowering your heart rate, it's boosting your immune system. Many other benefits of cuddling. Yeah. So
loads of benefits, and that kind of makes sense. I think sort of the science now backs up our intuition, and obviously there's been a global conspiracy to keep us all apart of late. But it's that's a pretty essential human need, and I really worried when the sort of COVID rules came in. I was like, I don't think you understand. You're banning a human need that's a really important need. It's not nice to have. This is a core part of, the Romanian orphans are a good example, aren't they? What happens to people when they don't get touch, sadly.
Yes, they got sick. They died in the end. Like they all got very pathetic. Like they shut down. They just gave up on life basically, and they died. Yeah.
It's almost like touch reminds us that we're alive and that we're in community and that we're valuable and worthwhile and all those sort of things, but not on a cognitive level, but a visceral reminder.
Yeah, but also on a physical level, like it's on all levels. It's touch is super important. And I also want to stress, like, of course, now with COVID, there's a lot of people who don't get touched in the way they want to. But in my practice, when I do one-on-one sessions, outside of COVID, I have people who haven't been touched by anyone else than their doctor for sometimes 20 years, like 10 years or 20 years. And then they come and I'll just put a hand on them or hold them or let them hold me. And it's amazing. It's heartbreaking, really, how much loneliness there is all the time. Not just now, but all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's different demographics there, aren't there? There's elderly people that may have no touch. There's men who can't get touch unless they're fighting or fucking, There's definitely differences in different demographics in terms of who has... There's a certain touch privilege that I think women have, for example, that most men don't in our society.
Yeah, in our society, Western culture, for sure. Yeah,
so,
for sure.
There's differences, aren't there? And you've done sort of whole TED Talks and things on this now. Like, what is it like to be like a touch expert? Like, it's kind of a fucking weird thing to be an expert in, right? Like what is it like to be like, oh, she's the hug lady, It's like,
I can tell you that inner shy part of me that I just told you about, she's still there, and she's often looking around and she's like, what the fuck? Everyone likes me now. I'm the popular girl. I never was the popular. This is so weird. So it's mainly, it's almost surreal to become an expert in something that you kind of like choose, that you're like, you know what, this is what's interesting to me, this is what helps me grow as a person, this is what makes me thrive. And then suddenly there's people looking at you, be like, hey, come and speak on our stage, hey, come do a workshop, hey, come on my podcast. It's kind of surreal, actually.
I actually didn't recognize you because I'd had you recommended by a few people, and I came straight into this call from supporting someone that needed some support, one of my mentees. And I'm kind of spending 10 minutes before the call, kind of looking at someone's website, reminding myself who I'm talking to, because a lot of podcasts I kind of forget. So I always remind myself. And I came onto this call and I was like, okay, kind of Dutch name. And then I was like, who is this person? And I was like, I didn't really recognize you, even though I'd done quite a lot of research on you. And I've, this is the picture I've seen of you, on the stage with the microphone, with the black dress, and, looking really like, hey, I'm an American TED talker kind of vibe. And I'm super confident. And it's like, oh, I'm trying to like match that with this kind of person I'm meeting now. And it's making sense, like what you're telling me about your past. And it's kind of making sense because you were really recommended by quite a lot of people to me. So I've seen this image of you many times and I've gone, okay, I did this name. Once a name comes up like 3 or 4 times, I'm like, okay, we'll get him on the podcast. But I somehow hadn't made that connection when I met you because there was a different vibe there from what I'd seen in the sort of on stage presence,
I've got many different faces.
Oh, no one must be put in a box, least of all women. Yeah. Opening up. You mentioned open relationships. This is something that's still pretty taboo, that's becoming more common. Yeah. Maybe people have heard of polyamory or open relationships, or there's various variations of that. Some people might think that it's the same as some sort of 60s free love, and other people might, they might have some sort of misconceptions about that. So is that something you want to talk about?
Always. Yeah.
Go for it. What is it? What is polyamory, open relationships? What is that for people that don't know what that is?
To me, it's everything that's outside of the normal monogamous paradigm of relating. So for some people, the practice of that is that you go to a kinky party with your partner every now and then. That could be open relating. For other people, it's having 5 or 6 relationships at a time. For others, it's going to swingers parties. For others, it's having an extra boyfriend or sharing a girlfriend or whatever. It can be. The thing with open relating, or I like to call it non-monogamy, because like both polyamory and open relating have some stigma around it. It's like as soon as you leave the book of monogamy, then there is no book anymore. Then there's no rules anymore. Then there's endless varieties and ways.
Yeah, because that's very different. Just sort of both people being open, having many lovers, as opposed to sharing a girlfriend. Like that's a very different situation. And in terms of what the rules are, the communication rules and the safe sex rules, and how people orientate that around children, and like all the different sort of things in people's lives. There's very much many kind of constellations, I think they call them, don't they? And in a way, monogamy is fucking strange. Like there's no other situation. I mean, it really is fucking weird. There's no other situation in life where we go. Like, imagine if we did this with friends. Okay, Wilrieke, we're friends now. You can have no other friends. I am your only friend. You will only do friending things with me. That would be kind of like controlling and weird, right? Mm-hmm. And often, I've noticed people often put a kind of hygiene exterior on this, like it's about pregnancy or social STIs or something. But that's not really what's going on. Underneath that is the core moral narrative of our secular culture, which has made monogamous romantic love the core mythos of our culture. So it's deeply taboo to go against that. That's my experience.
Oh, totally. So totally.
We just agreed.
I totally
disagree with you. Add something. Come on.
It's right. We have been kind of programmed, and some say by the church, some say by, I don't know, politics, whatever, but it's the wiring in our brain is that we relate with one person. And you make the parallel with friends. You can also make the parallel with streams of income. I want abundance in my life. I want a lot of money. Then you go and create different sources where it comes from. So if I, as a person, want a lot of love and a lot of beautiful sex in my life, I'm going to focus it on one person and one person only.
You have to meet all my needs now. Touch, love, intimacy, connection, sex, no matter where you are in your cycle, no matter where you are in your life, no matter where I'm at, none of that. It all has to come from you, or else you're a bad person.
Exactly.
It's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
Kind of weird, right?
A lot of pressure. Fucking hell.
There is a lot of pressure. We do put a lot of pressure on the partners that we have. And on the one hand, it's taboo that can keep us into the monogamy paradigm. And on the other hand, non-monogamy is not for the faint of heart. It is terrifying. It's scary because it's not just going against the grain. It's not just dealing with the judgments of people around us, but it's also dealing with our own fear. Because, when insecurities, because of this, probably the same programming of our brain, when the person we love has sex with another person, there will be a lot of, past conditionings and stuff that will tell us, like, now they don't love us anymore. So when we go into open relating, like,
that's the female version. The male version is, I want to fucking kill that guy. It's a little bit different.
Oh yeah.
But it's maybe a slightly different flavor. But there's definitely stuff that comes up emotionally that's pretty confronting, right?
And you have to want that. Like, it's not, a lot of people think, okay, open relating means a lot of sex with a lot of people. Yay. That's definitely not, that should not be your motivation, because it's not going to be that easy.
And there needs to be the communication, there needs to be the emotional work. I mean, the communication is a big part of it as well, right? Being able to say, hey, actually, this is a line for me, that you don't go with my friends, is that a deal we can arrange, Like there's lines there, aren't there, in terms of where the boundaries are for different, because it's not given. If you think about it, it's almost like society gives us roles, and now monogamy is almost the last one. you know, we've lost gender roles, we've lost work roles. You know, in the past, my ancestors would have just done the job of their, you know, the one before them. You know, if your dad was a blacksmith, you're a blacksmith. We've lost roles in you know, king or country. You know, we've lost roles in our village because we don't really live in those villages anymore, like you and I grew up in. So it's like we have to make all these choices, and that's really tiring and stressful. But at least at the middle of all that, there's still monogamous romantic love. So it's like, do you really want to make that into a choice? Because it's sort of easier just to go along with what's given. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to arrange it. It's just presented as a template to you, right?
Yeah, but you can still make that choice. Like what I really like I am definitely not a non-monogamy missionary or something. Like I'm definitely the last person who would say like we don't
believe in the missionary on this show. We don't believe in the missionary anyway. That's crazy talk. Okay, yeah. So you're not trying to convert people.
No, I'm not trying to convince people about anything at all. And the only thing I like to do, like if I can support someone making a conscious choice, then my job is done. So if someone says, you know what, I want to be in monogamy because that's my empowered choice, then go, you know, beautiful.
Awareness and choice. That's, wow, that works for me. This is what I want to choose. You know, sometimes I just get judgmental about it just for fun, just to fuck with people. You know, I say, listen, you're a sexual anorexic, you're weird control freak motherfucker. just literally just go right into like hardcore judgmentalism in the same way as you can receive back the other way. Right. And it's just for the fuck of it, just to go, look, I can make a case that you're as sick as you're saying non-monogamous people are sick. And it's like, but if I was to play devil's advocate, you know, often a case I sometimes hear is something like, but then your partner will get less love because you're spreading your love around. Or the spiritual version of that is something like, oh, you're not forced to confront the spiritual growth of being with your partner. And I think this is a genuine risk, actually, because you can just do a side thing and then you don't have to do that process with your partner, right? How would you respond to the sort of zero-sum love argument and the sort of argument of it's not because I have sort of spiritual people say, well, it's not really spiritual because you're not in that growth relationship in the same way.
Oh yeah. Well, some spiritual people say love is limitless. Like there's abundance of love. There is no end to love. Like, you know, and I agree with that to some point. You know, I've got 3 children and I love my first kid so much. And then you know, as when you have your first baby, you think you'll never be able to love someone else that much. And then the second kid comes and you love him just as much. So I do believe that we can.
A bit less. I want this to be on record. A little bit less. 20 years time, your kid's going to have therapy when they catch this podcast. A little bit less. A minute.
Because of you, probably then.
I will pay for that therapy session 20 years from now. So, okay, so sorry, limitless love, kids.
Yeah, no, I do believe that we can absolutely love multiple people in a very deep way. And, you know, time is limited. So, yes, when I see different people, there is, you know, at the end of the line, there's less time per person.
Right. So that's have so many friends too, right?
That's a choice I make. If I spend all my time with one person, at some point I get a bit bored. You know, it's not about quantity to me, it's more about quality. And at the same time, you know, but let's be honest, I've been in a monogamous relationship for the past 6 months. It just ended, but I've been in a monogamous thing for the last 6 months. It was great. It was great. Give my nervous system a bit of a break of all the communication, because there is a lot of communication.
Less choices. It's kind of nice for a while, isn't it? Yeah.
It's kind of nice for a while. And then my system was like, oh, come on, where is adventure?
Well, people, the other things I often hear are, but don't you catch loads of diseases? And it's like, well, no, because you can still practice safe sex. That's
what I want to say. I've had my adventures, let's say it that way. I've never ever had an STI yet. I may get one, but I've never had one. I've had partners who I was their second partner and they had an STI. So it's not in the numbers.
Someone might argue the statistics that you're increasing your chances, right? I mean, you are increasing your chances with, numbers. Of course you are, but if you go out of your house, you increase your chances of getting the flu, you know? It's what happens. Sure. And I'm all pro mindfulness and informed choice is what I call it. So my personal rule is before anyone takes their underwear off, we're gonna have a talk. And the talk right now got very boring.
sexy.
Boring, conscious woman. let's have a long conversation about it. Oh, so boring. Doesn't that just take all the fun out of it?
It does not. It does not, because it shows that I'm a responsible person. It shows
was
that I
responsible around sex. Oh, come on. Such a grown up. Oh my God. This is like boring.
Yeah. Or the spiritual version of that. I don't need testing because I don't catch anything. I'll just, get it out of my aura. People say that. Oh yeah, there's very tantric people who say like, I never get STIs and I also never fuck with a condom because I can't feel anything through it. That's the quickest way to turn me off.
Fucking retards. That's fucking retarded.
It is.
I'm sorry to be judgmental, but that is. No,
but that's also why I have those talks, Mark. That's why I ask people, like,
check that
what
out.
do you usually use when you fuck someone? What precautions do you use? When were you tested?
I get my second
I can ask you in a very sexy way.
Okay, well that's worth flagging. I mean, I see your logic there. That's definitely worth flagging, and that would be like a bit like, no, I'm not. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting.
You don't meditate. I don't do that.
No, enjoy
I want to know what risks I'm taking. I care about my body. And I want to know what risks I'm taking. So I want to know if before I get into bed with someone or wherever we're going to have sex, I want to know what risks I'm taking. If you're fucking around with everyone without using any precautions, I'm probably not going to fuck you. I need to know that.
It's very matter of fact. There's some cultural stuff in here too. But it's, okay. Let's talk about kink. So I had my friend Melissa on the show yesterday. Who, do you know Melissa? She's a Berlin scene,
yes.
kink scene.
Yes.
Yeah, she's old friend. So she was on talking about kink. We always have a good time. And in case people missed that one, what is kink and why is it not just a sign of pathology?
Wow, that's a big question. What is kink? Kink is, again, it's pretty much everything outside of what's perceived normal. It's like what is not standard routine in bed. Everything outside of that could be kink. It can be fantasies, can be kinky. Using gloves, like these rough gloves or soft gloves to touch someone can be kinky. Having sex outside or in your car could be kinky. It can be anything.
Having monogamous sex in a missionary position with the lights off. That's kinky.
Pretty much the opposite of that.
What's the kinkiest thing you've ever done that you're willing to admit to
really?
on a public? It's a public podcast. This is recorded. Yeah. Your mum might see it. Your children are going to see it.
Might listen to us when they grow up.
Given that, what is the kinkiest thing you're willing? And I'm not going to admit anything, just for the record. So, what are you willing to admit to? Is there any particular fun ones?
There's a whole list. So I have to think about which one I would want to share.
Which one you want to share?
I remember.
I'm not going to edit it out. Don't email me afterwards asking to edit it out. This is it.
I remember one very kinky thing I once did was being sexy in a sauna. These steam cabins, they cannot film anything because of the steam. And I was having a little bit of fun with my lover and his slave. And
lover and his slave.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
We were just having
like everyone's got a slave. That's just normal.
We had a bit of sexy interaction going on, and then suddenly two people came into that steam cabin, and we were like, "Oh, nothing happened." And they were like, "Yeah, there was, but please continue." And we were like, "Okay."
So they just had their sauna while you three are going for it?
Sorry?
They just continued. Was this in the Netherlands?
Oh, yeah. In a regular sauna.
Excellent.
So that was fun. And another thing that might be probably very kinky is just, when I one of the things I do for a living is have play parties. I'll dress up in my own sexy attire.
You want to say what a play party is, because not everyone will know that.
Yes, of course. A play party is like kind of like a guided space, like a space that's held. So there is someone having an overview, doing an introductory workshop and such. And then you can do whatever you want within the space that's designed. So my play parties are sexy, so people can have sex in them. They can do they can do tantric things, they can do kinky things. It's all fine. And then me and my team, we will also dress up in our kinky things, whatever that looks like. And then I'm there in my fetish clothes, just looking at everything and just watching it and just standing there dancing in the middle and seeing these people do sexy things. To me, that is very kinky and I love it.
Awesome. Why as Embodiment Podcast, right? Like, why might we be interested in kink? I mean, because one thing here, I don't think there's too many conservatives listening saying, "Oh, you're sick and weird." I think a lot of people might be listening though and saying, "Okay, cool, that's your business. You're into sort of sex, that's cool. Mark's into dolphins, great, whatever. That's your business. As long as the dolphin's consenting, it's all good." And like, I think that's kind of a pretty normal view amongst my liberal friends, but it might be like too much information. I don't know. But why might embodiment people be interested in this topic?
Yeah. I can tell you what it brought me in terms of embodiment is that, again, I used to be very shy. I was not a person taking a lead, and people can tell you how to do that. Like step in front of groups, go practice speaking, do this, do that, tell people what to do, in a consensual way. But when people tell me that, I don't feel it in my body. And my belief is that I need to do it and feel it in my body before it really reprograms my brain. Correct. And in kink, one of the most profound things for me, and I've seen happen a lot with other people, is that moment that someone put me in this dominant leading role over someone, I was stepping into this, you can call it this archetype or this inner, tapping into this part where I can actually be that, or you can even call it role play. When I step into that role of leading someone and I actually become that person, then I get this embodied imprint of like, okay, this is what it's like to take lead. And you know what? It's not that scary. It wasn't for a few seconds, but it's not, and it was so much fun. And then I started to feel the fun in leading, and also in consciously letting someone else lead. And it changed everything.
Sexual. I mean, basically you just made a very good argument for why embodiment is important. I think it's a very eloquent, concise argument for why embodiment. We have to step into things physically, not just read the books on them.
Oh yeah.
But you could step into the role of a military general or an airplane pilot. Just as, why make that sexual? What does that add to it?
Oh, I just want to say that kink is not necessarily sexual. Like most of the best kink scenes I've done are not necessarily sexual. So I can keep my clothes on and have a very kinky, sexy session with someone. So it doesn't have to be sexual. Many paths lead to Rome, I just happen to love the kinky one. So if your path is that one of that general and it works for you, then great. And I just happen to prefer this one.
It can make deep personal growth work fun. I mean, if someone said to me, hey, you want to learn, to submissive role, do you want to do that, with a hot girl in leather, or do you want to do that in a boring way? I'd go, I'm going to go for option A. Like that is a more interesting way to learn anything, surely. I mean, it's motivating, it's interesting, it's engaging, if nothing else.
Yeah, there's so much pleasure in it. There's so much fun in it. There's so much fun in spanking someone's butt and making that consensual, joyful experience. And other than that, like even with the spanking example, it's also a beautiful modality to heal trauma. So there's...
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. There's sort of potential for both trauma healing and trauma, what would be the word, reenactment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's say a bit more about the relationship between kink and trauma.
Well, many of us have, pretty much everyone has experiences in their life where their power was taken away, or when someone was overpowering them in a non-consensual way. And what you can do with kink is kind of like you say, like reenact it, but then consensually and maybe with a different outcome. So maybe you have trauma where someone like overpowered you physically, and you reenact it in a way where you throw them off of you, or where you are the one.
Trauma work is explicitly that. I mean, that's Paul Linden's explicit trauma work around self-defense. He's a martial arts teacher, and he will, that's essentially what he does, is he sets up situations where someone is being attacked and then gives them a different outcome, and it's profoundly healing for people. But that doesn't necessarily organized in that way in a sort of kink scene, is it?
Sometimes it is. There are workshops and places where we actually set this up, where people with each other, like really as a like the kink world, like one of the stigma is that it's a violent world. Well, it's one of the most loving, if not the most loving.
Yeah, definitely. Lovely people, just really consent boundaries and sweet and just very pleasant. My experience,
a lot of consent work that's now touching the bigger audience comes from
kink came first, right? I came across kink and I was like, wow, this is so much better than yoga. Yoga's really abusive,
Yeah.
Fucking people need to spank each other a bit more. So,
But also in other ways, for example, if you have been humiliated or verbally abused, you could set that up where someone is actually saying those things to you, and you just hear them again and again and again until the charge is completely gone. And you can release it. You can release it. Sometimes it helps when it's stuck, when it's in a part of your brain that you cannot access. I've had sessions where I was dominating a person and just spanking them while saying something to them so that they could break through these walls that are like keeping them away from healing. Like the trauma would have such a wall around it that you would like literally have to consensually use impact to get through to that. And then they can release the emotion. And
now they're just dying inside and writing angry letters, and I mean it's potentially quite delicate work you're talking about here, huh?
It's super delicate work, because as when you are dominating someone who's going into this emotional processes, you have to be so precise, like knowing when to stop your hand in the air and just take it back and breathe, and then guide them into like letting go of these old emotions that are still stored in the system. And then often it such scenes end often in an emotional release of anger and sadness, and then at the end it's like people shed a load of weight, all this weight that they carried with them, they can like finally release it.
What do you think is the relationship between how people are in the rest of life and their kink? So, there's these stereotypes like, the submissive secretary who becomes the dominatrix, or the dominant businessman who wants to be dressed up as a little baby, and I've seen a little bit of that in myself, but as I've become more sort of powerful and successful, I've sort of seen the other side of things as a bit more attractive, because it's just like, I just want to turn off. And that was not normally my mode, I don't want to reveal too much here, but it's like, it's been like, okay, like now I see both sides as having a place, and it's, what's your take? Is it compensatory? Because I've also had sexual partners who were just exactly like they were in real life in bed. There was no compensation, no balancing. It was just, they were them, but maybe more so, And then that's kind of like, I would guess like most of the dominant guys I know are kind of probably a bit dominant in life generally, high testosterone, high achievement kind of people. So what do you sense is the correlation? Because you've probably got a bit of bigger sample size than I have.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much like you say, like there's the people who are in a similar flavor all the time, and there's people who compensate. It's exactly as you say. Sometimes they switch, sometimes they don't. And there are more submissive people than true dominant people in the world.
There are more submissive people.
Yeah, there's more submissive people. If you take a general population, like real authentic, more people are submissive than they are dominant.
Why is that?
I don't know. I do know actually. There is, it's as a society, you don't need that many leaders. You just need a few. You need a few good leaders, and you need a whole lot of people who can follow that leaders in different ways to have a functioning society. And it's the same, like the real authentic dominating people, dominance. There's fewer of them. And then I'm not meaning the ones who abuse their power or who like act in something which is not authentic.
Yeah. And what, I've had partners in the past who were kind of guilty about being submissive. They were like, I'm a modern feminist Dutch woman, I shouldn't be submissive. And, like they had a narrative that like, and when they let that go, they just enjoyed themselves so much more.
Yeah.
And others who just won't ever let it go, I've come across, because it's just, it feels like politically guilty or something for them. And I've also met kind of new age hippie guys who also weren't able to accept their like dominance as well. But it's like generally, depending on the culture, subculture, like conventional people, it's going to be men one way, women the other. Then that's flipped for less conventional people, less conventional subcultures. Do you come across people who have that like guilt of their sexual type?
Yeah, a lot. And it's one of the things I'm passionate about, is to support people to let that shame go. But, honestly, looking from more general perspective of society, there is no place on the kink spectrum that's accepted and not taboo. Dominant men are perpetrators, submissive men are sissies, dominant women are bitches and ruling, I don't know what, and submissive women are no feminists, there is no positive place on that area at the moment. There's a lot of taboo on any.
Culture there, right? I mean, the Netherlands is not England, and hippie communities, it changes. I get grief as a dominant man, just dominant in my manner. I get more grief in a Buddhist center than I ever will do in a business, right? Just like there's a context there.
Of course. Yeah, of course. This was very much generalizing, of course. Yeah.
Cool. What else are you passionate about in this topic? Like, why is this your thing? What is the thing you go, want the whole world to know this?
What important is to me is to, we don't get to practice touch and consent in a normal world. I wish we did. Like, we learn in school, we learn how to, when it comes to sex, we learn how to not get pregnant, how to not get sick, right?
Right. That's the focus. Yeah, don't get a disease, don't get pregnant, and this is the biology of it. This is the
Nobody tells you it can be fun. Nobody tells you it's okay. Nobody tells you it's a need to have intimacy. And intimacy to me is the full spectrum of being real with another person. So from eye gazing to touch to cuddling to sex and kink and everything. Like, nobody's teaching us that. And what I'm super passionate about is that we all get the opportunity to feel in our bodies what it means when I want something, when I have a desire, and that I get an embodied sense of when it's a boundary, of when I don't want something related to intimacy. So we need spaces where we can practice that. We need spaces where someone tells us, okay, now stand in front of someone and feel what's happening now. If you come closer, what's happening then? If you go further away, what's happening then? And what does that mean for you? What are your signals? I cannot tell you how your boundaries feel. I can tell you how mine feel. And by now I'm able to communicate them, which for a lot of people is super difficult. I know it has been for me. So we need places. We really need places, not just places to touch each other. I do think we need them really. We really need them too. And we need places where we can practice intimacy, where we can practice vocalizing, saying yes to someone, saying no to someone. Because how many of us haven't, violated our own boundaries just because we couldn't say no? And if you've practiced that like 10 times, 20 times, 100 times, it's so much easier when it really matters.
Sure. It's like you need a dojo. You need a place where you can practice, where there's no consequences, where there's controlled conditions and consenting partners who aren't going to abuse you, right?
Yeah, like, and some support. Some people around you who are like neutral support. If you need to share about it, or yeah. I would so want to change that in the world.
Cool.
Yeah.
What biggest misunderstanding around this topic you come across?
That everything is about sex.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, a lot of people cannot, like, sometimes when people ask me, what do you do? And I say, I host cuddle workshops, that's when I say in schoolyard and stuff, when I don't want to talk about the sexier things. And then people say, oh, but those are orgies, aren't it? Like, no, it's not sexual at all. Or sometimes people say, I don't do cuddle workshops. I'm more advanced than that. I only do when I can have sex with another person. There's this hierarchy of touch where kissing is better than cuddling and fucking is better than kissing.
Right, it's more advanced somehow.
That's such a big misunderstanding. Like, cuddling on its own is as worthy as sex is, It's not, one is not better than the other or more evolved than the other, however you want to say that. It's just a different flavor. And we have different needs in different moments with different people. This is what I say in my TED Talk too. It's like we have those different needs. And it doesn't mean that one is better. It doesn't mean that if I have sex with you, I like you better than when I cuddle you. It's just I have a different, our connection expresses itself in a different way. Or, this is the expression that fits this connection. Doesn't mean, eye contact, just this 2 seconds of a smile with a stranger on the street. It's worthy. It's perfect. But that could be enough for that moment. It doesn't mean that if I would have stood there for half an hour, it would have been better. So this idea of hierarchy.
Fair eye contact's not my idea of a good time. It's something
you have a different flavor. That's great.
I agree with that.
Love eye gazing.
Yeah, they're wrong. So I agree with that. And there's something kind of that can be fake that's attached to this.
Mm-hmm.
I particularly hear this from women. It's very big in the yoga world to say, well, this is not about sex, when it's clearly sexualized. That's clearly the carrot that's being dangled. That's why most of the men are in the room, if not the women. And
to watch the downward facing dogs from behind.
Well, if not the yoga, but maybe it's the Tantra workshop, It's like if you took away all the sex, then, or the possibility of sex, then, there'd be a lot less participants there. Yeah. And
well, I want to challenge that, because my cuddle workshops are strictly non-sexual, and there are so many people coming to them.
I'm not debating. I don't know your particular workshops or your particular crowd, and I do think there are other needs other than sex, obviously. But what I'm trying to point to here, I'm sure you've seen this, is a fakeness. And this has been part of the evolutionary game between men and women for a long time. That men are slightly more interested in sex more of the time, in that sperm is cheap, pregnancy is expensive. So, and we're not cyclical in quite the same way.
Yeah.
And this in all animals that have a large and a small sex cell, this is the case. All right, this is why normally it's the men who are doing the peacocking and the performing and, trying to kind of trying their best kind of thing,
Yeah.
And I'm thinking out loud here, and it's quite delicate territory, particularly in sort of 2020. But there's a way in which I see that game being played where it's in the women's best interest to deny things are sexual, because that means they can get maximum attention and male resources without, particularly in a monogamous environment, we'll have to sort of choose, at some point. Queen Elizabeth played this off her entire life, with the different suitors. And Elizabeth I, I should say, if the current queen is out there, I don't mean you, darling, okay? So it's a historical fact. And the men, it's in their best interest to say it's not sexual. And I definitely see this in New Age communities. They're like, hey, I just want to connect. I just want to cuddle. I just want to, and then it's like, you want to fucking get your dick wet. You want to fuck. I know you do. Come on, be honest. And if I call people on this, like, oh, you're just projecting your own blah, blah, blah. So it's like, can we at least name that this...
Oh, yeah.
There's a denial of the actual sexuality of certain situations which benefits people. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
it's not smart to go into a room and just be like, hey, I want to fuck a whole load of people here and I'm going to be completely upfront about that. That's a terrible strategy. As a man, as a man ever, that was a terrible strategy. For a woman, that's a terrible strategy. Like I've been thrown out of events just for being like overtly sexual with people in a very, respectful boundary.
Again, I want to challenge that.
I think you're attractive and I'd love to have sex with you. It's like, that's harassment. Right?
Again, I want to challenge. I do want to challenge this. Like, I agree with you fully. I agree with you on the difference in gender and desires, or evolution and all of that. And I also agree with you on the fakeness. And I can tell you from my experience in my personal life and what I've seen happening in my spaces is that when a man is super honest about his desire, when he's like really authentic and really says, you know what, he walks up to me and he says, you know what, I would love to fuck you. And he's authentic in it. He's not hiding it. He's not making it bigger. It's just super authentic. That to me is a turn on. And I've seen so many women, even when it's in a group and a man says, you know what we always share desires in these play parties. And then someone may say, my wildest desire would be to have sex with 5 women tonight. And everyone feels the honesty in that. Like, you really have to be honest. But when people can feel your honesty, that is so much more attractive than saying like, oh, I just want to cuddle and massage.
Terrible advice, men. Don't listen to this.
Be honest and
authenticity
be respectful.
Is attractive. I'll give you that. Authenticity is attractive. This is going to get men listening to this slapped, sued, fired, and it's not going to get them ladies.
I'm not saying you cross anyone's boundaries, because you don't get sued if you don't cross. If you're authentic and just explain, this is my desire.
It doesn't matter if you don't cross people's boundaries, particularly in the Netherlands, Germany, and Sweden's place like that. It doesn't matter. Just having those desires as a man and being honest about them is dangerous. You're showing massive female privilege by not realizing this. You're giving out massively dangerous advice to men out there.
I'm just saying this is my experience.
Of course, it's a different experience as a woman. It's totally different.
Yeah.
Are you bisexual?
Slightly.
Okay, a little bit. Okay, so probably less experience with women. Okay.
Oh, I do have a fair bit of experience with women.
But no experience as a man. No, I mean, you don't, right? I don't know what it's like to have a period or to give birth to a child. I'm not going to try and talk about that.
Yeah. No.
I'm pushing back. I think I'm mostly agreeing with what you're saying, and there's beauty in what you're saying, and the idea of touch being essential, and the idea of authenticity being being able to authentically express our needs And there has to be the container for that. And modern society is not the container for that for men. That's what I'm saying.
I do agree with you. It has to be the right container. So please, no, don't go scream everywhere, I want to fuck you. Like if you're a construction worker in the street and you've been
walk down the street, you want to fuck?
No, I do mean in the right container, and I do mean, not in an offensive way.
To be fair, you did say it before, didn't you? You did say we need these containers for places where people can do this.
Yeah, where we can practice that. Yeah.
Cool. A little tussle, a couple of dominants, tussling. That's good. It's one way to become friends. It's my whip.
Yeah.
We've got time for one more. We've got time for a quickie. One more. Any other subject that we haven't touched upon here?
We're going high speed. There's a lot of subjects we're touching here in very little time.
Always want to slow
very efficient.
Always Tantra girls always want to slow things down. We anything at all. We can come back to one of the topics if you prefer. We can have a round 2 on one of those ones.
Let's see.
Terrible interview. We're used to professionals. You said a lot of interesting stuff. I appreciate it. What's the work you most love doing? Is there like a thing that you most really love teaching? Just like right now, this isn't like the CV, this isn't the elevator pitch of your work, right? Is there just something that's kind of hot for you right now?
It is the mixture of kink with Tantra. And Tantra to me is most about presence. So if you want to say it that way, it's about very present, conscious, kinky dynamics. That is what I'm most passionate about, because there's so much empowerment in that.
That seems to be a leading edge. I think these worlds are colliding because kind of, Melissa and I talked about this, that the kink's coming out of the shadows. And Tantra is considered a bit more normal now. And it's like they can cross-fertilize much more easily. It's not like the kink crowd and the Tantra crowd and they have like secret societies and secret websites and secret club nights. It's much more just like, oh yeah, I tried that at once at a festival, and oh yeah, my friend John is into that, So it seems like those two are cross-fertilizing pretty well right now, particularly in the context, like everybody knows Stephen Porges and Peter Levine, it's like in the context of trauma work that I think could be a pretty juicy kind of coming to fruition, sort of trauma meets Tantra meets kink, because a lot of Tantra has been very abusive and not trauma informed, right? All the scandals, particularly with dude. I was looking for a Tantra teacher for me and my wife to go to, and someone just said, pick a woman. Just pick a woman. Any guy is going to be a fucking abusive twat, There
are a few good ones, but yeah.
Who do you recommend? Who's good in the space out there? We'll obviously let you say your website in a bit, but who else is good in the space that you recommend?
In the Tantra world?
Yeah, kink or Tantra, or that whole people have maybe listened to this, they're inspired.
Yeah. Well, in the UK, there's Shani Love. Shani is amazing. Shani, Shani is amazing. He is very much trauma informed and consent friendly. So I would say definitely check him out. He's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Globally, we have listeners in Scandinavia, America, Australasia.
In the Tantra field, I really like Shashi Saluna. She is very beautiful Tao Tantric arts, lineage work. So very old stuff she's teaching, really good stuff. I must say I am very critical because, as you say, there's a lot of trauma, and there's a lot of consent to me is really important. So when a Tantra workshop starts, for me, face someone, make eye contact, and then give them a hug, I'm out of the room. I don't want that. I want to have my empowered
knife in front of your chest. That's the secret to not getting hugged at hippie workshops. Just walk around with a little knife, just putting it there. No one hugs you, man. It's it's a miracle how it works. Or if you can't, a pair of scissors, that'll do it. Just walk around with a pair of scissors there. No problem. You can still get back hugs, so you still have to be careful, or side hug, but at least the full frontal's out. Oh, okay. Where do people find your stuff? Where do they go on the interweb?
On the interweb, they can go to exploringdeeper.com. That's my website. Or if you want to see that TED Talk, you can just get my first name, get it right, get the I and the E in the right order, and just Google Wilrieke TED Talk. You'll find my TED Talk. And just find my name on all the socials. I'm everywhere. And Facebook, Instagram.
What's it like doing a TED Talk? Years ago, I did a video called Better Dead Than TED, and I think that blew my chances of doing a TED Talk. But, it was basically what about all motivational speaking is bullshit, and people can still find that video, I think. But also it looks fun. I would totally do a TED Talk if I was invited. So what is it like? Because most of us have seen TED Talks.
It's a lot of work.
As I understand it, a lot of preparation, right? You have like
it's
a coach.
Completely scripted. I didn't know. There's nothing spontaneous. It's completely scripted. So you have to like write your talk. Then a whole bunch of people is having their opinion on it. You have to rewrite it a bunch of times, and then when it's finally okay, then you go practice it. And on average, they say, the TED people, they told me on average people practice their speech about 60 to 70 times, which is a lot of time, many times. So I practiced it a lot, and even, you know, they say practice your focus. So I would put on Netflix and the most annoying series I could find, and then look at Netflix and then still do my talk. And it worked. And then I was there, and then you have to walk on stage, and then people have an opinion about how you walk on the stage.
Really, like whether you strut on, whether you do a cartwheel,
what you wear, how you move. So it's amazing.
You have to like pick your dress, pick your shoes, and then think about that. And then people judge you, and then you see the little counter goes up. How many hits have you got, Wilrieke? How many? Like if I went to YouTube, you know, do you look at the comments? I
don't know. Last time I looked, it was over 60,000. I'm not sure what it is now. So
how do you feel about over 60,000 people having seen? I mean, there'd probably be about 5,000.
My inner exhibitionist loves it. She is.
Your inner exhibitionist loves it.
Oh yeah.
I'll bring it up now. Let's see if it makes you happy. How many numbers there are there on there? How intimacy design can change your life. Wilrieke, so 61,000 views, and it's only 6 months ago. Wow, you're rocking it. Good for you, man. Okay, good. Cool. Final message about the body before we wrap this one up. Before we put this gimp in the sauna.
I would say, allow yourself to enjoy pleasure. There's so much pleasure to be experienced, that we can experience in our body, and to just give yourself permission to find your way of experiencing that pleasure, whether it's, you know, within the paradigm or outside of it, whether it's kinky or vanilla or monogamous or non-monogamous, it doesn't matter, but to find your way of enjoying pleasure in your body.
Nice. A pleasure. Thank you. Thank you well.
Thank you for having me.